So I'm going to be telling you all about my integration PE lesson. So the subject I chose to do was science with PE, and I'm doing a lesson on exploring the food chain. So I chose a 5th grade lesson and standard, and in my class there's going to be 24 students, and there'll be one with an IEP. So I'll have 24 students in my class, and there's going to be 11 girls and 13 boys. No ELLs or gifted, but there's one with an IEP who has hearing problems. He has hearing loss. So I'll be providing visual aids through a PowerPoint in my instruction when I'm discussing the content as well as the activity we're going to be doing for the PE part. And there's no students in the class who do not speak English, so everyone can speak English and listen and read it well, so that's good. And there's going to be 20 Caucasian students, 2 Asian, and 2 African Americans. So the lesson, the science standard that I'm using is 5 PS3-1. Use models to describe that energy in animals' food that's used for body repair, growth, and motion, and to maintain body warmth was once energy from the sun. Students are going to be able to interact in a way that shows their understanding of producers and consumers within the food pyramid through playing a physical tag game. And the PE standard used in this lesson is the physically literate individual demonstrates competency in a variety of motor skills and movement patterns. So they'll be doing that through the physical tag game that we play that helps them learn about the food chain. The formative assessment in this activity lesson is going to be an exit card that I have students do once we get done with the game that we play. They're going to come back in the classroom and they're going to do an exit ticket. And this exit ticket, they're going to draw a pyramid on a small card or a piece of scrap paper or whatever they have. And they're going to label each section of the pyramid with examples of producers on the bottom, which is different types of plants, primary consumers, animals that only eat plants, and secondary consumers, that are animals that eat other animals. So the resources will include paper, pencil, whiteboard, smartboard, computer, smartboard, sorry I just said smartboard, PowerPoint for instruction, and then of course an indoor or outdoor court with boundaries for tag game. So whatever we can use, either the basketball court outside, the playground, or a gym, or even the classroom if we have to, if we can't do the other things. We'll make it work. So the engage portion is 5 minutes. I'm going to be asking students if they've ever seen a wild rabbit in the city, or in a movie or a book, a wild rabbit. And I'll ask the class what they eat, which will be plants. Then I'll have I'll ask students if the rabbits are afraid of anything, such as predators. And students will give me a bunch of different answers. Then I'll draw a pyramid on the board that has 3 sections. There'll be producers on the bottom, primary consumers in the middle, and secondary consumers on the top. And then the explain portion, I'll ask students where they think the rabbit fits into this pyramid. And the rabbit will be a primary consumer and herbivore because it only eats plants. And I'll ask students where food that rabbits eat should be. So I'm not going to go and explain everything that I'm going to talk about, but there's not too much more in that part. But the main part is the elaborate, which is the game that we're going to be playing, which is the PE activity. And this will take up most of the class time lesson. So they're going to play a tag-like game, and they're going to be playing roles of hawks, rabbits, plants, and one sun. So I'll assign about half of the class to be plants, and the plants, I'll go ahead and talk about what they'll do in a minute. So half of the class will be plants, a fourth of the class will be rabbits, and about a fourth of the class will be a hawk, and then 1 student will be the sun. So I'm going to be having this on a PowerPoint for the class. I'll have all of the game instructions and information on this PowerPoint slide that they'll all like listen to and read with me before we go outside and do it. So, the plants, the half of the class that's plants, their rules are they have to keep their arms to their side, and they have to try to avoid being eaten or tagged by rabbits. So if they're eaten by a rabbit, then they convert to a rabbit. So the plants will just kind of stand there like a normal plant. They won't really be moving. They just stand in one place. And if they get eaten by a rabbit student, then they turn into a rabbit. So a fourth of the class will be rabbits. So rabbits, they need to put their hands on their heads like bunny ears. And they try to eat or tag the plants who are standing like this. And they also need to avoid, these rabbits need to avoid being eaten by the hawks. So, if the rabbits are eaten by a hawk, they convert to a hawk. So then, the other fourth of the class that's hawks, they're gonna run around waving their arms like they have wings. So they'll be like waving them like this. And they will try to eat or tag the rabbits because they eat rabbits. And these hawks are going to avoid being tagged by the sun. So the hawks will be flying around the room or the court or the outside trying to eat rabbits by tagging them. And if the hawks eat the rabbits, then the rabbits will convert to hawks themselves. Then, if these hawks are tagged by the sun, the one student who's a sun, if they tag any hawk, then those hawks will convert to a plant. So, the plants can get eaten by rabbits, the rabbits can eat plants, the hawks can eat the rabbits, and the sun, which is going to be like the sun, can tag the hawks, and those turn into plants. So, those are like the main rules of this tag game. So it's very educational, and they're also going to be moving, making movements with their bodies, which works with the PE standard, controlling their body movements, and they're going to be jogging around if we have the room. If not, they'll just be walking around in circles. But also, one more thing. The sun, the one student who's a sun, can tag hawks by converting them to plants. And the sun doesn't have to have any kind of hand motions, but everyone should know who they are because it's just one student. So we'll explain to the students that the sun is the most powerful of all. And the students will pretend in this game that there's no water to drink for either the plants or the animals. And without water, animals will die of dehydration. So, after a long process, dead, decomposed animals eventually return to the soil and nourish plants. And the sun gives energy to these plants. So that's why this game is very useful with this lesson, because it's explaining the food chain of how the sun's energy gives energy to plants, and plants and animals work hand in hand together to feed off each other. So I will also call students up to the board before we go outside to the PowerPoint, and I'll probably decide, I'll just pick students to be certain roles so that way we get the right amount of students. Or I might have so many lines in each category, and I'll just call rows and they can choose whichever character they want to be, whatever role they want to play in the game. So, but after we go over the rules, I'll have them sign up, and then we'll review the rules again before we head out. So I'll talk about how the hawks wave their arms like wings and hunt the rabbits and avoid the sun. And when tagged by the sun, the hawks turn into plants. And rabbits make bunny ears on their head, and they hunt the plants, and they avoid the hawks. And if they get tagged by a hawk, they turn into a hawk. The plants keep their hands to their side. They avoid the rabbits, and they don't hunt anything. So I guess they're allowed to move around if they want, but they just aren't really hunting anything. They can just walk in circles, trying to stay away from everyone. And the sun can only tag the hawk, only. Any student who's a hawk, that's the only ones the suns can touch. So once the sun touches a hawk, then the hawk converts to a plant. And the sun doesn't have anyone hunting it. It's just the sun. It provides energy. So this will get students physically moving and active during their science lesson, and it requires specific movements and controls of their bodies, which will fit the standards of the PE lesson 1, standard 1. So once we get back in the room, we'll do that formative assessment where I'll have students write on a card, and they will make a pyramid, and they'll give some examples of producers on the bottom, primary consumers in the middle, and secondary consumers in the top. And they'll turn that in after they share it with a friend and share their ideas, and they think they have it right, and then they'll turn it in. And that will be my PE integration lesson.